Welcome to Reflections, a program where we discuss values and virtues for the transformation of the individual and the society in general. And I am Father George Ehusani. I welcome to the studio Majeed, Dahiru. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Father.
Barka de Salah, right?
Barka de Salah, Father.
Yeah, I mean, how was this year's Salah?
Father, I'm sure as somebody who is actively involved in the social well-being of Nigerians, and as a father to many children, I'm sure you know that we have sacrificed too much to have anything left to sacrifice.
Are you saying that if after this recording we go home, you don't have a lot of ram? How big was your ram?
Father, our Christian friends are complaining bitterly since yesterday.
Christian friends are complaining
that we've not extended invitation to them
to come and eat ram.
To come and feast on ram meat. So, such is the situation in the country today. This is about, I don't want to use the word worst Salah celebration in living memory, but this is one of the most depressing times across board. And don't be too jubilant, because Christmas might not be any better than Salah.
What do you mean? What do you mean by worst Salah celebration? I mean,
people have so lost their economic status. It's like a complete erosion of the economic well-being. The devaluation of the naira, the increase in the price of petrol have combined to reduce Nigeria deeper into the poverty threshold. And so people don't have much to celebrate with this festive season. So it's that serious.
And
people cannot even travel back home easily to celebrate. And most importantly, Father, why those that are able to celebrate are doing so, there's this anxiety about it. There's this caution to it, because you don't know where the next meal is likely going to come from because of the current situation in the country.
Is it just not where the next meal is going to come from about anxiety? You don't know where the next tax, where they are going to tax next. Exactly. Because within 1 month, we had the fuel subsidy removal, we had the exchange rate, the devaluation of the naira. Then we're hearing of 1,000 naira levy on car, proof of ownership every year. I don't know where you have to prove ownership of the same car you are using. You have to prove that it's your car every year.
And so, like you rightly pointed out too, we're expecting other.
Then we heard rumors of NEPA bill about to be increased by 40%.
By 40%, and we're also looking at the possibility of taxing diesel and petrol at the rate of about 7.5%. So it's a.
So we don't know where the next tax is coming.
Exactly. So all of this combined has created this atmosphere of anxiety over the future of our individual and collective economies as Nigerians.
And while all that is happening, 30,000 naira is still the minimum wage. And
some states, not just some, majority of the 36 states of the Federation are not able to pay 30,000 naira as minimum wage. Some are still struggling to pay.
Some are owing 3 months, 6 months.
Yes, and those that are still struggling to pay 18,000 naira minimum wage are actually clearly in the majority. So as Nigerians are being asked to sacrifice over and over again, those that are presiding over our affairs do not think that they need to also lead by example by making the first sacrifice on their privileges, cost of governance, and the effort to stamp out corruption in public administration of this country. And so, I don't know, we have tightened our belt to the extent that we don't even have bellies anymore to do further tightening.
Earlier today, I received a text from a friend, and it says, our leaders on every religious feast, such as Salah of yesterday,
yes,
admonish us to make sacrifices, whereas the Nigerian is so deprived that he has nothing left to sacrifice.
Yes.
And that this is an offensive admonition to keep admonishing people who are dying of poverty to make sacrifices. See, this is offensive admonition.
No, it's offensive.
Then he says, when will our political office holders begin to make sacrifices themselves? When shall we remove the obscenity of huge spending on government without governance? When will those long convoys of recklessly driven SUVs disappear? Maybe you saw a convoy of the president a few days ago in Lagos that stretched perhaps over 100 cars and heavy-duty cars, heavy-duty SUVs, plus buses.
Yes.
It is the money of the people who are called upon to sacrifice that puts fuel in those vehicles. They certainly are not living in Nigeria, those leaders.
Yes.
They squander our wealth while we deify and eulogize them. They remove subsidy, use our money to fuel cars, and we line the route as they drive by, and we're hailing them.
You know, the thing is, some have described it as a form of Stockholm syndrome. But I also think that if the political leaders think that Nigerians are indeed stuck on them, I think that will be coming to an end, because this is the lowest in our lives it has ever been. And they must be careful, because this particular government should be ordinarily dispensing dividends of democracy in order to shore up its sagging legitimacy. But unfortunately, that is not the case. While the President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, has removed subsidy from petrol and has put in place a policy that has seen the devaluation of the national currency, he has not made any firm commitment on the cost of governance, and neither has he made any firm commitment or promise or pledge to tackle corruption with the aim of stamping it out completely, because every country must struggle, must make efforts to stamp out corruption. And that is why we saw the kind of convoy that we saw when he arrived in the country from an overseas from a private trip overseas. A lot of people have said the convoy was made up of other government officials. That is no excuse. They are all part of the government.
It's still government funds. And they were not going for any government business.
They had no business being there, because for a country like Nigeria, where citizens are impoverished, Nigerians today are some of the most impoverished people in the whole world.
In the whole world, yes.
Our president has no business flying private jets. Neither does he have business driving in long convoys. The sacrifice must begin from the very top. And for as long as they are not willing to do so, Nigerians may not be willing any longer to sacrifice more, because you cannot have the sailors of a sinking ship behaving like drunkards and expecting people to watch them sink their ship. I think they are beginning to take Nigerians for granted, really. And again, we must begin to interrogate some of the thinking behind our political economy that has given them the courage or
audacity,
to inflict such hardship on Nigerians and
live like emperors.
And actually count it as an achievement. As if people are actually praising the president for taking a courageous step in removal of subsidy and the courageous step in floating the national currency. And they are also urging him on to continue to take such courageous steps that have inflicted hardship on Nigerians. And so I think we need to have a conversation around the desirability otherwise of some of the orthodoxy, economic orthodoxy that has prevailed over time in this country, that has led us to this dead end.
You know, on this program, a couple of years ago, I interviewed Chief Audogbe. Chief Audogbe said he was in government when they began to devalue the naira, and that he warned it was 1 naira, less than 1 naira to $1.
To $1, yes.
And then they said they want to float the naira, and he warned that this is a slippery slope. There will be no end to this. But this orthodox economics,
yes,
Harvard-trained economists will come and tell you that this is the way to strengthen the economy of the country. Then they saw the textile industries disappear, the pyramids, granite pyramids disappear. Then they saw
Nigeria's productive base.
They saw Volkswagen Von disappear, Peugeot Nigeria disappear, all the productive base of Nigeria, they saw it disappear.
Yes.
And today we are talking of 800 and something naira to $1 within a 40-year, 35-year period.
Yes.
What's going on? And we keep talking of these people as economic experts.
I think if you observe the time Nigeria began to slide into this.
That's 1985-86.
Exactly. You will observe that corruption increased at the same time and continued to increase in government and public sector. So people in government were no longer able to make do with what was available to them because they needed to spend this money on productive ventures. And so, as an easy way out of their responsibilities, some of these authorities began to creep in. And so because their priority was no longer public service, but self-service, they began to implement some of these policies. First, it was subsidy removal on education, on healthcare, and on energy. And secondly, they floated the naira because they were no longer willing to do the difficult task of making life easy for Nigerians as leaders. They were not ready. So you observe, sir, that over time, as corruption was increasing in government and the public sector, more and more of these poisonous spills were being administered to Nigerians.
A few days ago, I passed by one of the universities, one of the traditional first 5 Nigerian universities.
Yes.
And I saw the infrastructure, the buildings. I nearly wept.
Yes.
This is a place I used to go to in the 70s and in the 80s. When I saw the decrepit structures, not fit for,
even for animal breeding.
Yeah, not fit for pigs.
Yes.
This is where our students are staying, our young people, whom you want to train to become gentlemen and ladies.
Yes, to be citizens.
To be leaders. And they are, as you know, they are some of our best.
Yes.
Some of our best young people. I looked at those structures. I don't want to name the university, but it is the same. Should you go, whether you go to ABU or OAU, or you go to Ibadan, or you go to UNN, the structures are just deplorable.
Yes, across board.
And I'm saying, what are we doing to the future generation?
You know, like Father Kinwale rightly pointed out, we now have a government without governance system in Nigeria. And that is the end product of what has been our lot since the middle 80s.
Yes.
And that is why at this point we need to sit down and have everything, because the political leaders in Nigeria, the current set of political leaders, have taken advantage of this orthodoxy to completely abdicate their responsibilities of providing governance for the people.
Social responsibility.
You see,
the contract between the people and government. Yes, social contract.
And that brings back to the issue that has created the current level of hardship in the land, the issue of subsidy on petrol. The question of removal of subsidy on petrol should not have arisen in the first place at all, let alone being a campaign promise. Because a lot of people have said, look, the president actually campaigned on removal of subsidy and he has forfeited his election promise.
So we are applauding him while we are going to our graves.
But that is where the problem actually started from. It should not have in the first place been a campaign promise. I say this because petrol constitutes a body of energy products and services. Energy includes electricity, diesel, gas, aviation fuel. Anything that powers
the economy
constitutes energy. And because energy is to the economy what oxygen is to the human being or to living things, it simply props up your existence. Globally, it is a global best practice to make sure that every country enjoys energy security, just like food security is also prioritized. Mm-hmm. And because energy security is prioritized and is identified as something that stabilizes your economy and increases your productivity, and also, of course, translates to the welfare of citizens, government makes sure that energy must be available at an affordable price. That affordability component of energy security makes it imperative for government to subsidize energy.
Which is why in many countries, energy is subsidized.
Energy subsidy is one of the best things that can happen to any country. And when it was criminalized in Nigeria I raised a lot of concerns about that narrative that, look, we are treading a very dangerous path. Energy security is a national priority because it constitutes national security. You cannot but subsidize energy. Subsidizing energy is actually subsidizing production because these are things that are required to keep a country productive. And that is why the global community, by 2022, spent $1 trillion subsidizing a range of energy products and services for their citizens. The United States of America, for example, the headquarters of capitalism in the world, spends an average of $50 billion annually subsidizing energy, including petrol. Petrol is subsidized in America, in addition to electricity, education, and of course, food. In fact, welfare is so prioritized in America that 19% of their budget, 19%, the largest component, higher than defense, higher than education, higher than healthcare.
Social welfare.
Is dedicated to social welfare and social security and welfare. That is the norm. As we speak, in UK, as we speak today, electricity is subsidized.
Of course.
As we speak, it's called energy price cap, subsidy, because you cannot allow citizens to continue to pay so high an amount for energy.
By the way, our government tells us that the reason why they remove subsidy is that it is benefiting only a small cabal that are that claim to import fuel. They are not importing the fuel, that are taking it all, or a small cabal that take this fuel that has been subsidized, that they take it out of the country to Benin Republic, to Togo, and to Dahomey. What's your reaction?
It's when the government makes this claim consistently, it shows complicity in what is actually a criminal enterprise. If you as a government cannot defeat the corruption associated with subsidy administration, what you're telling the world is that corruption has defeated you as a country. And you're expecting foreign investors to come into a country that cannot manage its own subsidy regime. It is not an excuse. It is not the problem of the citizen who is law-abiding, who pays his taxes, and who is simply trying to exist for your own failure. It's your responsibility to administer government business without corruption. And where people are found to be culpable in corruption, it's your responsibility to bring them to book and sanction them appropriately. Talking about porosity of the border, that is even very laughable. If the government of Nigeria cannot prevent tankers of petrol,
from those 40 feet tankers,
if they cannot prevent tankers from leaving our borders into neighboring countries, how are they able to prevent criminals, the smuggling of light arms and weapons into Nigeria? So how is this government or the previous government or the one coming after them, how are they intending to fight security if you cannot secure your borders? How do you blame Nigerians for border insecurity? How many people have been prosecuted for border insecurity? Whereas we know we have a problem of porous borders. What has been the effort of government to tackle this problem?
I mean, to complain that people are still taking our fuel across the border is to say we have no customs.
It is to say we have failed as a government. Because border security is one of the most important aspects of national security. Yes. You are telling me that we have failed. Saudi Arabia is an oil-producing country like us. Saudi Arabia has a country called Yemen, a troubled country, a war-torn country that borders it to the south. Saudi subsidizes all products, all energy products from fossil fuel, including diesel, including petrol, including gas, and in fact, it subsidizes even electricity. How come Saudi does not have a problem of smuggling of products to Yemen? How come it doesn't exist in that country? How come China is able to subsidize energy to the tune of $130 billion annually for its citizens, and they don't have a problem of smuggling products across the border to countries like Taiwan, to Mongolia, to Taiwan and other countries? How come the European Union as a whole has in place generous energy subsidies for its citizens? Germany, for example, is going to subsidize electricity for manufacturers and industrialists to the tune of €5 billion in 2023, so that it can be competitive with China and other countries that have such incentives for their own manufacturers too in the global market. Now the question is, why are these countries able to do all of this and not go broke?
So we are being punished for the failures of government.
It's as simple as that. It's an abdication of responsibility to remove subsidy on an energy commodity in Nigeria like petrol. You see, people don't know the implication of subsidy removal when some people championed and supported this removal. One, the most important energy product in Nigeria is petroleum. The reason is because, one, you do not have constant electricity in Nigeria, and because Nigeria's economy is largely informal and is dominated by SMEs.
See the number of I pass my neighbor all over the place using petrol
to power their small businesses.
Yes.
And so the most consumed and the most important energy product in Nigeria is PMS. And so any subsidy removal on PMS is going to cause an economic earthquake in Nigeria.
Yes, it has caused in the last few weeks.
It's going to affect everything, and inflation will become a serious issue you cannot contain, while it will also lead to unemployment. People are already falling out of jobs. People are already falling up because there is a resource squeeze among citizens. Our purchasing power has been eroded completely. And so even if you increase the price of your goods and services as an SME, you won't have patronage. So that is an automatic loss of job for you and whoever you have employed in your businesses. That situation we find ourselves in today. And so government should have prioritized subsidy as an important investment in productivity, knowing the importance of PMS to our economy. And so when government yanked off subsidy and expected something different from what we are seeing today.
And by the way, Majeed, what business do we have importing fuel?
That's another conversation entirely. As an oil-producing country.
What business do we have importing fuel?
Nigeria is about the largest oil-producing country in Africa.
You are telling me to buy fuel at the global price, along with countries that have no fuel.
Exactly.
No crude oil.
It makes no economic
business
sense.
Do I have? And then the new democratic regime has come 24 years,
yes.
And we have been talking about fuel queues, importation of fuel, and we cannot fix one refinery. And then you come and start celebrating the fact that an individual has put up the biggest refinery in the world in how many years?
Father, you see, there's also another orthodoxy, side by side, what we've been discussing, that has also prevailed over time. And in that orthodoxy that says government has no business.
Business in business.
You see, I don't know how we swallowed hook, line, and sinker this line of thought. And it has ruined our economy completely.
I think the advice coming from World Bank, IMF, all this, I think the advice they get, definitely not for the good of the people. Because they have been giving us all this advice since 1986. Since 1985, the structural adjustment program era.
Yes.
And we have been going down and down and down and down. If somebody has been giving you a prescription,
yes,
you are sick. Somebody has been giving you a prescription for the past 35 years, and your sickness is getting worse. Don't you think you should look elsewhere?
The worst part, sir, is that the World Bank has one of its major critical stakeholders, the United States of America. Just like IMF has Europe, and particularly France as one of the major stakeholders. None of these countries
is doing structural adjustment program
at all. As we speak, our president just returned from France for a summit. It was one lesson I expected him to learn from that summit, is that in France, the company that provides electricity for the French people is a state-owned enterprise. It is owned by the French government. The energy company in France that provides power for the people is owned by the government and operated by the government. And through that SPV, the government of France subsidizes electricity to an amount that they don't disclose to anybody as an official policy of the state. And in the United States of America, the government of America, just like the government of any responsible country in the world, is hand, legs, and head and neck deep in the means of production.
Look at how much they subsidize agriculture, the US.
Because you need
to make their products competitive
abroad. And subsequent administrations in America will always strike trade deals on behalf of their farmers with trading partners like China and the European Union. That is government doing business. You see, a few years ago, I visited the High Commission of South Africa in Nigeria. And the High Commissioner told me that, look, we have changed from political solidarity to economic realism because we need to actually grow our economy. And so we want to penetrate Nigerian markets more. And he told me that before coming here to attend to me, there are business delegations from South Africa that he's actually making effort to get them the necessary concessions they need in Nigeria to operate. Meaning, as the High Commissioner of South Africa in Nigeria, he's acting as the chief salesman of the South African economy. And he's trying to create an avenue of overseas investment opportunities for homegrown companies and entities. Is that the case with Nigeria?
And we have foreign affairs people in every country where we are.
We appoint politicians into these positions
instead of technocrats.
Instead of people who know what they are doing to help drive Nigeria's overseas investment opportunities. It is non-existent. And so it is a complete failure of government. The people that are giving you advice, I don't apply the same advice to themselves. So that leaves me with one opinion, really. I do not think it's the fault of these multilateral agencies. I think they have lowered the bar for us because they think that we are incurably corrupt. We're not operating at full human capacity. So they need to lower the standard for us so that we can actually climb. So that is where the problem is. If somebody tells you that you cannot, as a government, operate businesses, you cannot function well, you cannot do without being corrupt, it means he's telling you that you're actually a subhuman entity. Because in his own place, he has overcome these challenges.
Yes.
And that is why they are able to pay subsidies on energy. If you observe global trend, whenever a new government comes in any of these countries, the first thing they do is to impose subsidies. The first thing they do is to ease the burden on the people. The first thing they do is to roll out welfare packages. But in our own case, is to deny us the little we've been enjoying.
Majeed, the cumulative effect of all this. In this little place called Terra, within the last 2 years, up to 10 prominent families have relocated. Up to 10 prominent persons have relocated out of this country to Canada, to the UK, and so on and so forth. And those relocating are among our best.
Yes.
And then the rest of the people are losing their job.
Yes.
And anybody who loses his job now, there's no possibility, hardly possibility of getting something else.
You can't get your job back. It's not possible.
So we are really in trouble. Nigerians are really groaning.
Yes.
And so please help me tell the leadership, tell President Tinubu, tell those that is been gathering around himself, stop this flamboyance. Let Nigerians see that you are involved in the sacrifice. People are appointing, is it the House of Rep Speaker?
I've appointed 33 aides in the first instance.
33 aides.
In the first instance.
Now, we no longer need, we need to ask ourselves whether we need Minister of State even, not to talk of all these hundreds of special assistants. I mean, we need to begin to look at the model of the former president of Paraguay, who lived in his old house, used his old Volkswagen, lived, and the people love him to death. They will love him because he was sacrificing. He was giving example of sacrifice. But those who, I mean, when I look at those heavy SUVs, many of which are bulletproof.
Yeah, of course.
Which cost more than 100 million naira. When I see them 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 on the road with one person going to the airport, I feel sick. I really feel sick. And I do hope that Nigerians will, with one voice, can say, stop this wastage, stop this nonsense.
No, we need to say it. We need to say it very loudly and very clearly to the leadership that Nigeria can no longer
afford this bazaar.
Yes, and for President Tinubu, I know he's a leading member of the establishment. And so expecting him to do otherwise would be expecting too much, because if you agree with me, sir, our political process has degenerated over time into a criminal franchise of power grab or power purchase at all costs for the purpose of self-service. And so expecting somebody who is an insider of such a degenerate system to be an agent of change will be a little bit being too optimistic. However,
we will end it, because we are going to discuss and have another session to discuss this whole thing about governance being a criminal enterprise.
Yes, it is.
Now, we shall have another session to do that. I have been speaking with Majeed Dahiru, staff of Terra and political analyst. We've been speaking about what Nigerians are going through now. Nigerians are groaning terribly. And we do hope that those in authority will consider the consequences of the people being pushed to the wall. They will consider that there are dire consequences if the situation continues as it is going now. May God help our country to rise beyond the present messy situation.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.